Community Board to come forward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Councillors. We appreciate the opportunity to speak to you, especially at such length. It's the first time I remember being able to do that for such a length of time, so thank you very much. I thought I'd start off with some general comments. I mean, you have our submission in front of you. The board has worked through the capital program in our ward with the community twice, once in January and once recently. And we think we have a very good understanding of where our community is at and what they see as the priorities. And we have submitted both a list of priorities and a list for deferrals. And the Opawaho River, the Heathcote River, is our #1 priority in the ward. I mean, there's lots of other more mundane things, but that is the thing that we all agree is really important. I want to start with the financial strategy. There is a lot to be said on this, but I wanted to focus on one thing in particular, is that large capital projects are seldom completed within planned timeframes. And have a look at the anchor projects that have just been delayed further. And currently there's an estimated 450 million unspent from this annual plan. And I don't know what the numbers are today. But 450 million is a considerable portion of 1.2 billion. And our board believes that we should be scaling back the capital program and scale back the plans, and that we should keep the assets, and the loss of about $230 million of dividends over the next decade will result in higher rates. And it just doesn't make any sense to sell income earning assets to fund things which don't earn income. And it's important to keep that dividend stream because there's no point in selling it if we're going to be compensated, because who would buy it if we're going to be adequately compensated for that dividend stream? Moving on to metropolitan opportunities for saving, the board does believe that the Central City Library is a viable and excellent anchor project, and we'd like to support that, but we also understand that the Cathedral Square needs to be refurbished for it to work. The board does oppose council contribution towards the convention centre, whatever that may be. I understand that that money has been completed, but the community is very, very strongly against the convention centre. We're opposed to any more spending on car parking.
That's any convention centre at all? You don't think Christchurch needs one?
Well, no. The community is against spending on a convention centre when the roads aren't fixed yet.
Yeah, but we've got nothing in our budget for it.
Yep. Well, that's good to hear. But it's important, I think, for us to communicate that the community is opposed to the convention centre.
But if the government wasn't doing it, then we'd have to have a convention centre. We'd have to put money on budget for a convention centre.
I understand the position you're in. The community is also opposed to more car parking being funded, opposed to a new stadium of any description at this point in time. Everybody says, why on earth are you doing that? Also, our community has said that don't think that accessible city phases 2 and 3 are a priority. The board does support all urgent projects in the land drainage recovery program. I think that all the urgent projects should proceed as planned, but any non-urgent projects should be delayed. And with Accessible City, we know it's a 20 to 30 year plan, and spending should be focused at the tail end of that period rather than in this current long-term plan. And
the board opposes any cuts to council grants to community organisations. We think that these grants go towards the most vulnerable in our society. We understand that the council has discussed whether this is core business, and it may not be core business according to a strict
No, it was
analysis.
a mistake. The 2% cuts were a mistake made after we saw the activity management plan. We've already said that at the beginning of the session today.
I'm absolutely sure you're right, Madam Mayor, but there has been an attrition over the years in real terms anyway.
Sure.
And
so you're asking for an increase?
Well, we have asked for an increase in past submissions to the council that over a period of 10 years, restoration to the previous budget that was held in what, 2004?
2006.
2006, yeah.
And it amounts to, I mean, the current community grant scheme amounts to, what, something like 0.04% of the total
It was a
operational
mistake.
budget. Yeah, what I'm saying is that
after
it's a
the
small,
budget.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
but
completely
it
understand. I'm very pleased that the council is in favour of retaining what is, but remember,
we're reviewing it after the event. As we said, we're looking for a more resilience-focused approach to funding community organisations, so it's not just an annual grants process. That's why we've shifted some people to longer-term ones, and we've got better reporting requirements, reducing their reporting requirements, so that we can make it easier for community organisations. But that's what we've done so far, but we've still got this review that we're undertaking.
all right. Moving on to our priorities for our ward.
So as Paul has mentioned, the Opawa Heathcote River is our number one priority. It's something that our board is very focused on, and we would like to see the poor cousin of the Avon have the same attention that the Avon's having into the future. Things like flood defence, cleaning up the river, sewage that goes into the river, a whole lot of things like that. So our community is very focused on that, with a group working towards it, and also to maybe relook at the Mid-Heathcote Master Plan as well, but keep that in focus.
In our top 10 list, we also included Grange Street, and you'll remember Ms Dalzell, that last year when we were here on the annual plan, that you said you would make special note of Grange Street. They were due for the street to be refurbished starting a month after the earthquake struck. They had waited 10 years. They were incredibly generous. They came to the board and said that they understood why Grange Street wouldn't go ahead, but we wish to keep faith with them, and we have included it in our list of priorities. We also are interested in the Sydenham Heritage Church, which we've placed on our priority list as well. This was pulled down, accidentally or not, immediately after the earthquakes, without the knowledge of the guardians of the Sydenham Heritage Church, who had spent $750,000 on it for strengthening prior to the earthquake. It now sits as a pile of rubbish at the entrance to Sydenham, depressing all those who pass by and all those who see it. We wish that rubble to be analysed immediately for asbestos, and to see if it has got asbestos, and either way for the rubble to be removed, either in order to build a significant entrance to Sydenham to remind people of that which stood before, or for it to be carted away for good. But we wish the problem of Sydenham Church to be treated as an urgent issue. The other issue is Locarno Street. Locarno Street has a pumping station which has never caused them any problem. We have residents that have lived on Locarno Street for 40 years who've said that the pump station has never caused a smell in the street. It is now an overwhelming smell, especially on warm days. The residents have said that they can't live with it. They probably can't sell their houses while it exists there. It is the back end of St Mark's School is there, so is a tennis club. And the pump station is not being able to handle the developments in the Greenbelt and in the brown developments west of the city, which is now going through the pump station, which it was never built to handle. It is a safety issue. The residents are talking about going to the Ministry of Health. We would like that addressed urgently as well. And finally, the Opawa Public Library has been sitting on Opawa Street waiting. And we would like to see it addressed, to see if it should be saved. We would like to see it saved, and if not, for the council to start planning for a new volunteer library for Opawa. Finally, I'd like to say, because Paul's going to address the other ward projects for prioritisation, I'd like to say that I was one member of the board who consulted on the LTP at St Martin's, Hoonhay, Colombo, Crawcroft, Addington Fair and Addington School and other Addington places, Barrington, on asset sales, and to a person, the majority view of people that we consulted was opposed to asset sales. They believe that the council has an obligation to our ancestors to retain the assets that were built and bought for at some cost by the people that went before. Thank you.
And now, just finishing off our presentation, just to talk about deferral. Actually, the first item for deferral is Lincoln Road widening.
Okay, yeah. When I came on the board, it was planned that Lincoln Road would be widened, and I said then, and this was 8 years ago, and I say now that will be a lying in front of the bulldozer instance for me. The widening of Lincoln Road will destroy yet another suburb in the inner city of Christchurch because other people have moved outside of Christchurch and wish to get to work fast. The widening of Lincoln Road would probably take 10 seconds off the travel from Whiteley to Hagley Park for people traversing that area at enormous cost. We think it'll be the equivalent of the overbridge at the Basin Reserve, and we are all opposed to the widening of Lincoln Road.
So secondly, the board believes that it would be prudent to delay any repairs to the South Library and Service Centre. Now, this isn't because we don't value it, it's precisely the opposite. It's because it is our most valuable community asset, probably. It is loved, and when it closed after the earthquakes, people were really upset. It's going to take about 8 months to fix if it's a repair, and probably about the same if it's a rebuild. What we would like to do is see, if, as long as it's not going to make it more expensive over the long run, that it be delayed. Next, the board, none of the board members understand why the Byron Gasson intersection has been put down as a priority. And when we've asked for answers, the only response was that it's future-proofing the transport network. Now, I don't think now is really the time for future-proofing. Now is the time for getting rid of things that we don't need out of our capital program, and so the board would like that deferred significantly. The board has also sought information, and I thank the Mayor for ensuring that the board was able to ask a whole bunch of questions of senior staff. Unfortunately, they weren't able to answer any of our questions and haven't got back to us with information about these two items. And so we don't know whether these are needed or not, but the safety fences on Dyers Pass Road and the Pioneer Leisure Centre, again, if these are really needed, then sure, let's have them, but if they're not, defer them. The board also supports the deferral of improvements to 441 Colombo Street. There is already green space nearby. It's great that there's that strategic purpose which will enhance and contribute to the Sydenham Master Plan. But it's certainly not needed at the moment. It's there, we can work on it later, let's defer it. The Victoria Park driveway is in better condition than I would say the majority of the roads north of Linwood Ave and to the east of the river. It shouldn't be a priority unless it's going to come at tremendous cost, and you know, it is one driveway up a park. Next, the board has not seen a concept plan for Coronation Reserve and haven't been able to get any information about it, and we don't see it as a priority. It's not like anybody has contacted us saying that it's urgent, and we don't believe it's urgent, so that should be deferred. And finally, the Addington Water Tower is in the Heritage Rebuild Tranche 2, but it doesn't seem to be urgent unless it's a safety issue that can be deferred. Even people in Addington who are familiar with it don't believe that it should be a priority when we consider all the pressing needs. And that really concludes our presentation. So I'm happy to take questions, and so other board members.
Yeah. First of all, before I take questions, I just want to understand what the issue is with the Sydenham Heritage Church site, so I don't have a briefing on it.
It was pulled, as you know, it was pulled down probably maybe accidentally. We haven't been able to get to the bottom of that, but it became rubble almost immediately after the earthquake without an understanding of
I know
how.
the site well, and I know that the minister hates it as much as everyone else.
And the people, the volunteers who are in the trust that manages the church have for a very long time repeatedly tried in very many ways, like for instance at one stage we were investigating accessing a container to move the rubble to a safe place where it could be sorted, because there's a belief that the pews and the altar and other precious things still lie underneath the rubble. And they haven't even been able to find out if they're still there or what condition they're in. And now that they are saying that there's asbestos on the rubble, but there is a belief amongst the trustees that surface asbestos carried there by the wind and the passing traffic on Bryant Street, and that it doesn't, and that underneath the top layer, and they've had it tested, underneath the top layer there isn't any asbestos, and so that the majority of the rubble could still be saved to build a memorial to the church and an entranceway to Sydenham. Right. At the moment it's almost as bad as the cathedral in the square, writ small, in terms of blocking anybody's view of a Sydenham that can be progressive and can change for the future.
But whose legal responsibility is it? Yeah.
I was just going to say that if they were to remove the rubble without any asbestos there, it was, I think she said it was about $300,000, whereas with the asbestos the cost is something like, well no, $100,000 wasn't it?
Yeah.
But with the asbestos there it was between $500,000 and $1 million.
Yeah.
So the problem is that the surface asbestos is potentially increasing the cost of it and making it unaffordable, plus the money from the insurance has been held back by the council, so that the trust itself can't move forward.
So why is the council holding the money back?
It's the insurance money and it hasn't been passed over to them.
Because they were told to produce a business plan to give to whoever, and they haven't done that yet, but we don't really know.
And they didn't go forward with the business plan because of the issue of asbestos?
Because they don't know what their future
they don't know
is.
whether the
But
future...
you're asking for money to go on the ratepayers generally for this one site. So, I think probably what we need to do is get a report on the details of it to see what can be progressed.
And we've moved a resolution at the board asking for further finite testing for asbestos.
Yep. Tim?
One of the issues, and we brought it up at the board, is there's been two tests. One was based on the surface that had asbestos. The other, and it's really important to note, that the second test was taken 30 centimetres in at the points that the original tests were made that showed there was none. So at the board meeting, what we need as an essential move forward is to test whether the site is safe or not, because we have made arrangements, and they were made years ago, to put the rock, the Horsell stone, which is now very valuable, and all those bits and pieces. We have arranged and have had a long-standing arrangement with the council land at the Beckenham pump station to store it all and sort it while they look at what to do on the land. So the number one step, and it would be great if we can get a hurry along with the council staff to somehow work out how to do a third and totally conclusive test on the site, because as Melanie said, the difference between 150,000, which can be covered by the amount that the insurance has, to between 500,000 and 700,000, which is an absolute
Million.
It's a huge change.
So that's good. Okay, we'll get an update on that. So, and Tim, you were next.
Thank you. Just two questions. Under 12, on page 115, Metropolitan Opportunities for Savings, Anchor Projects, D.2. More, the community board are against more car parking other than disabled car park, accessible parking. What about the central city and its recovery with regards to retail? What is specifically you're talking with regards to the car parking?
Well, when you consider the lack of funds, shouldn't businesses be providing their own car parking?
And when do we move to be a Wellington kind of city where the chicken and the egg results in us using public transport? How do we do that if we constantly build the reason for the cars to exist? We have to at some stage say, or bite the bullet and say, if you want to go into town, you do what they do in Wellington, you go on public transport.
Right, if you build for cars, you get cars.
Yeah.
So irrelevant of any deals or whatever that could be done, or just straight out council funding, you're totally against car parking increase or putting...
We're not totally against car parking. We just say it shouldn't be one of our priorities, and it should be, if business want cars to park, they should be providing it.
Thank you. The last one is 17.12 deferrals. With regards to the South Library, you said it with regards to deferring it depending on cost, would also be, we asked for a report on its safety as well, so I just wanted to clarify that.
Well, that's right. If it's not safe, then of course fix it. I mean, if it's not safe, people will have to get out.
Yeah.
I mean, that's yes.
So we asked that for that.
Right, well, we're at the 20 minutes, but I'm mindful of the fact that I interrupted a couple of times. So Phil, then Ali.
So mine's really
You're fine.
That the board have clarification around, for example, the priority of the Apauaho Heathcote River, and like there's reference there to some specific, I guess, pollution issues around the Cashmere Stream, drainage recovery type issues. Do you think the bus tour we had the other day, did it highlight any issues around drainage, so that where the Heathcote River is in our ward, that in fact projects need to be done, need to be fixed? I raised that because the submission from Hagley Ferrymead had some specific places, but are we at a stage yet where there's some plan that you know of any plans, or asking for any plans for for some specific design on projects on the Upper Heathcote?
Not so much specific design, but it's the Cashmere Stream is a number one tributary and is a major source of silt. Helene, did you want to add anything?
Well, at this point, we haven't been given any proposed projects for the area, but yes, as Paul just said, the Cashmere Stream, that feeds into the Heathcote River, and you can stand by the confluence of the Heathcote River and the Cashmere Stream, and you see the sediment as it flows into the stream. So that's one of the areas that we're concerned about, and we have talked to ECAN as a community board about possible plantings and other projects, but as of yet we haven't heard anything.
Yeah, okay.
And it seems to me that actually relatively little money is actually set aside for the Heathcote in general, and that not too many plans have actually clearly been made is really what my impression
There's some
is.
bulk money funding in for land drainage recovery, and that's why really I'm wanting to explore this issue further with everyone, and especially the staff too.
We are holding a seminar specifically for that reason, involving all three of the wards involved with the Heathcote, which will look at drainage, stormwater, flooding and the environment, so that each group who have got something to do with the Heathcote can understand what the others are doing and can comply with the mid-Heathcote linear plan.
Great, and we'd like to come. Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, I have a question that I want to ask around land drainage as well, because of your request to take or to defer items in the program, because I want to get your take on the infrastructure strategy, but I know Yanni was going to ask a question.
Yeah, thank you. I do appreciate that you've raised the convention centre, which probably is costing us about 100 million if you take the loss of car parking, the old library site and Gloucester Street.
But they've given us land for a library site, Yanni, so
30 million is
please
going
stick
from
to
council
the
to it.
community board.
But just in terms of a question over the Sydenham church, like surely it's an occupational safety and health issue. Asbestos has come from somewhere and landed on top, and there's people walking past
Excuse me, Yanni, look, I don't mean to do this, but we've already agreed that we're going to get a full report on the site.
But I just, in terms of understanding, like the immediate risk, have you had any advice over council's liability or or anything like that in terms of immediate action required?
No, we've had very little information, and that's why we need a report.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if we could get something at council on Thursday, because I'm really concerned. I mean, this is one of the number of sites.
Yanni, there are two separate processes happening. Could you just allow...
Well, this was raised at a council meeting months
Yanni,
and months ago.
please. Now, I want to ask about this because you've raised the fact that that you don't believe that $440 million of spending on the land drainage recovery program is even possible in the LTP period. The infrastructure strategy highlights that that's at the lowest end of the lower end of the range,
In terms of
potentially $1.2 billion for land drainage.
And the
Our
same
city
applies.
has sunk as a result of the earthquakes. We now have the threat of sea level rise and coastal erosion in a more extreme form than it was before. The flood risks, you've already seen the natural hazard maps that are out there on the first stage of the natural hazards chapter for the district plan review. How on earth do we take money off the minimal end of a budget and then say that we shouldn't be looking at a new way of delivering a program that needs to be delivered over maybe a 20 or 30 year period, with more spent in the first 10 years than what is already indicated on the plan?
Well, I guess my point is, firstly, we don't have the money, but also there's not the capacity in the market. Like, if you can't... I remember after the first earthquake, we had a combined meeting. You may have been there, Madam Mayor, but where somebody got up, an engineer got up and said, look, we don't have enough pipes, the piping, we don't have the workers, we don't have the machines. You can't hope... I mean, I'm not disagreeing.
That wasn't for the land drainage recovery program. That was specifically in relation to the government's announcement that they were going to do perimeter treatment around particular areas of the city that were now vulnerable to lateral spread and liquefaction. So that was a completely separate issue. I personally think that if we don't get the land drainage recovery program right, we are not going to be able to clean up the Heathcote or the Avon. We're not going to be able to actually introduce some opportunities around wetlands. We have got this incredible opportunity to get our city right and to make it resilient to future events by actually using, for example, the residential red zone land in a way that would not have been possible if the houses had been left there. So
But when we know the projects that we need, let's look at them then, instead of going, oh, we might need to spend this money, because there's very little precision in the land drainage recovery program. And I mean, before, to me, it just looks like it's not a wish list, it's we might have to spend this amount of money.
we might have to spend $1.2 billion, is the point that I'm making.
But let's cross that bridge when we come to it. We're not at the bridge yet.
All right. Okay. Thanks very much.